Hi and welcome to Magic Numbers. This is episode number 174. Don't ask me how I know. And today we're doing the Skeleton Crew yet again. And our guests are Sam Pratt. Hi Sam. Yeah, there you go. Introduce yourself.
I'm here. Hey, I'm Sam Pratt. I host a podcast called Rough Drafts that covers limited, and I am excited to be here.
We have Adam.
Hey everyone, Adam, mostly just a limited grinder. Excited to be with you today.
I'm also surprised that you don't have contractors behind you this time, so I'm assuming that the house is finished.
Yeah, house is good. I've got a nice little pony back there for my daughter though, so I'm trying to hide it. Yeah, it's an animatronic. It's a little scary actually. It responds to its name, so
they will take over. They will take over. Yeah. Animatronic ponies, and we have Zachy K.
Hello, I'm Zachy K again, and I won entry into this stream in a raffle. No, I'm a longtime limited player. Sometimes content creator, although semi-lapsed now.
People would have believed the raffle, though.
I mean, I wouldn't be lapsed if there were people knocking on my door to create more content. So But hey, I'm bringing in the hairline that I can offer.
Oh, Sam had it covered. Anyway, skeletons, as hairless as they are just a way of doing a set review. So instead of looking through every card and doing 4-hour stream of every single card in the set, what we do is we look at some general trends in the set. We look at the mechanics to introduce them to you. But after that, I leave it to my honorable guests to build a simple deck that is built mainly of commons, but with, 1, maybe 2 rares in it, and maybe that 7-8 uncommons. You can make your own rules if you build your own skeletons, and I would highly recommend it to you if you're trying to figure out the format before it happens. Building decks, I think, is a better exercise than trying to put every card on the list of which one is better than the other, because those things are going to be very fluent. But thinking about what the color pairs want to be doing is actually a more productive exercise. And hopefully the thoughts of our guests will give you a good impression of what Lorwyn Eclipsed is all about. Before we go into that, we start with the usual thing that I do. And this is look at the damage-based removal. Just to think about how those removal spells are going to be positioned in the format. Because very often removal and alignment between creatures and removal is going to determine what is good, what is not so great in each format. So one thing that is pretty striking about this set is that there is very few 1 toughness creatures at common. 8%, that's the lowest number I've seen so far in all the sets that we looked at since Midnight Hunt. And that means that Vile Boggart might not be as good as we originally thought. I don't think that it's going to be a bad card or anything, because it produces a -1/-1 counter, which will stay on something. But it will not frequently kill something outright if you blight on it and it dies and it puts a counter on something else. So maybe something to think of. There's quite a lot of the uncommon X1s. But most of those have some kind of an ETB that will probably alleviate the loss of them later in the game. So that's the problem. Those numbers do reflect the creatures that come in with some number of -1/-1 counters, Adam. Nice. So I took them. I took them as they enter, because that's what I would normally do with other creatures that come in with +1/+1 counters. I wouldn't count a 0/0 creature that comes with 3 +1/+1 counters as a 0/0, but I would count it as a 3/3. And I do the same here. If I have a 4/5 that enters with 2 -1/-1 counters, in this analysis, it's counted as a 2/3. Nice. And, there are only 16 of those creatures, and a bunch of them are on high rarity, so they don't influence the numbers so much. But for example, here in the X1s, we're going to have the Moon Shadow and the Green Elf that comes with 5 -1/-1 counter as a 1/1, and they will be counted as a 1/1. Because what happens later in the game, it's not guaranteed, but you will have most of the time a window to kill something as it arrives. And why would I make a difference between self-contained boosts to power and toughness and maybe external boosts to power and toughness in form of some aura or whatever. Anyway, so the 1 damage thing, the Vile Bogart, and also there is a red spell that deals 2 and 1 damage to any target. I think that may be a bit less useful because the 1 damage to any target will probably be mainly reserved to go face or something. Then we have 2 damage spells, and here also, at common at least, it's not as effective as normally it is. 42% is relatively low. We're going to see a slide that compares it with other formats at common. But yeah, 42% at common is not that much. 53% at uncommon on the other is quite efficient. So it seems that uncommons in this set are focused around things that are smaller but have powerful enter the battlefield effects, or powerful triggered effects, or powerful when it attacks effects, or something like that. Or maybe creatures that grow later in the game also impacting that. But it is a bit weird that there is very few... this is cumulative, by the way. So 42 means that this is 2 toughness creatures plus 1 toughness creatures in this particular graph. Which means that 2 toughness creatures numbers are quite high, but because there are so few 1 toughness creatures, the whole number is relatively low. Then we have the 3 toughness or less creatures, and here we actually see quite a large number. So 75% at common and uncommon is quite a lot, which means that there's a lot of X-frees in general at common, especially. And as always, the rares, they tend to be larger sized creatures, so they lag behind what commons and uncommons do, while commons and uncommons are similarly sized for most of the formats. Things like Blight or Seer, the red 4 damage spell, they are going to kill 90% of commons, 88% of uncommons. I think that this is particularly important because that means that Cinder Strike, if you pay the whatever kicker it is and Blight on onto something and deal 4 damage with it, that kills 90% of creatures at common, which is pretty powerful for a 1-drop common. And that makes me think that Cinder Strike, if you will have a deck where Blight is not a punishment, but maybe even like a moderate reward on occasions, that's a massive improvement to be able to kill 42 creatures at common and 90% of creatures at common. This is an upgrade that probably is worth it, maybe even at the cost of like a bit of a board presence. And things like Blight or the Cinder Strike or Seer are killing 3/4 of rares and mythics on their face value, so that's pretty good. And then Feed the Flames, the 4 mana deal 5. This is, for the practical reasons, this is a murder for 4 mana. It kills 91% of rares, mythics, and 97% of commons and uncommons, which means that probably all but 2 or something like that.
Plus it exiles. Plus it exiles, which is relevant.
It does exile. Okay, we also have a couple of unconditional removal spell. First of them, Pyrrhic Charge, roughly killing 2/3 of creatures at each rarity, which is a nice thing to have. As you saw that for the damage-based removal, it's very often linked to the toughness and the power. Rarities are going to be having, like, the higher rarities are going to have more toughness, and that's why those damage-based removal spells usually kill more of the common creatures than rare creatures for the same price. Things that look at the mana value, not necessarily, because the whole point of rares being more powerful is that for the same price as a common, they have more stats, and that's exactly what happens. In this set, you can see that killing something with mana value 3 or greater will kill 2/3 independently of rarity. But if you would deal 3 damage for the same spell, it would kill way more common creatures than uncommon creatures. Same thing with the Requiting Hex. That's killing something with mana value 2 or less. I think people will fall into a trap thinking that this card is amazing, and it's just fine, I guess, because people will evaluate it through the lens of Fatal Push. It's not Fatal Push. Dealing with the 2-drops is not as important in Retail Limited as it is in Cube, which is also an important part of it. This is going to be something that will probably ask a filler quality common in black decks. And lastly, we have the Unforgiving Aim. This one kills either a flying creature or an artifact creature. Oh no, it doesn't kill an artifact creature. It just kills an enchantment. So there is very few creatures with flying in the set. Normally when I look at the retail set, I will find like 17, maybe 18 flyers at common. In this set, I found 8, if I remember correctly, or maybe even 7. And the same at uncommon. Very, very few flyers and not many big ones. So makes me think that maybe the big red dragon is going to be actually a bigger bomb than we think about it, because just it having flying in the set with not much flying and not much reach is going to be a big thing. So I would definitely err on the side of not putting that card in my deck ever in best of 1, and then it is a sideboard card for best of 3. So I would not recommend, I think, playing it. Then we have a couple of sweepers, and but not that good ones. It's not Edge of Eternities where we have 11 high quality sweepers. This one, honestly, if you look at it, it has maybe 3 proper sweepers, and I'm thinking Soul Immolation, Ashling's Command, and Darkness Descends, because these are proper sweepers that even not unconditional, they are damage based, but they can kill things. So Soul Immolation and Ashling's Command only deal damage to opposing creatures, which is amazing if that works. Ashling Command 2 damage, Soul Immolation as much as toughness on your creatures allow, because you can cast it. You have to Blight X, but X can't be greater than the biggest toughness of creatures you control. Don't fall into a trap that you have to Blight onto that biggest creature. No, you don't. If you have a 6/6 and a 1/1, you can Blight on a 1/1. A 6/6 survives fine, and you deal 6 to everything your opponent controls, which is seems like an amazing option. So I think that this Soul Immolation is the only proper Wrath, and it's at Mythic, so we won't be seeing it like every second game. Ashling's Command and Darkness Descends are things that deal 2 damage to everything, roughly, or darkness in the form of -2/-2 counters. And we have Winnowing, which is a weird Wrath that you choose creatures for each player, and then that player sacrifices all creatures they control that don't share a creature type with the thing that you selected. So don't ever select a Changeling on your opponent's side, because that's not going to end well. It's a very weird card. Also, like, I don't know why I tell you what to do with it, because I think that the best advice is just never play it, please, and you'll be much better off, I think. Because of this lack of sweepers, I actually selected Champion of the Weird as a sweeper, because I think that this card will work quite often as one. This is a Goblin Berserker, 5/5 for 4 mana. When it enters, you need to exile a goblin you control or a goblin from your hand, and you get it back when this thing dies. But the point is that you can pay 1 life to Blight 2, and if you do that, opponent also has to Blight 2, which means you put 2 -1/-1 counters on your thing, and they have to put 2 -1/-1 counters on one of their things. I played with that card, and every single time I played it, I could clear the whole board. So it technically works as a sweeper a lot of the time. And then there's a couple of like pseudo sweepers. Curious Colossus turns all the opposing creatures into 1/1s when it enters, and Morning Tide's Light flickers everything an opponent has, but it's one of those slow flickers. They come back at the end of their turn, which means that you can cast it, remove everything, attack with 1 big attack, and kill your opponent because they don't have any blockers. That about it. Any thoughts about the sweepers, dear contributors?
It feels like we have reading comprehension challenges on like 4 or 5 of these. Like, they really ask a lot of you. A lot of these sweepers.
Yeah, I don't even try to remember what Winnowing does. I just will read it every time, and every time I have to reconceptualize what the card does. And hopefully I'm going to read it a lot, because I love my opponents to play it.
I mentioned this when we were just chatting beforehand, but I do have my eye on Darkness Descends because it looks like a significant amount of the decks are going to be like revolving around small creatures, that being Merfolk, Goblins, and Kithkin. So I think the card's still pretty narrow because I think you only really want it in like black-white. But I do think it looks pretty effective, especially against, say, Kithkin.
Yeah, and in black white, it will be also an upside to have counters on your things, at least in some cases. So
or like you're just gonna have high toughness creatures there. So
yeah.
I don't think that card's a blank at all.
No, I don't think it's going to be blank, but it's going to be very specific. And I think that we have to sort of think that this is before the release of the format. Who is the audience? And I think that we can wink to the most invested audience, and they will know, Sam, that you are a mad brewer and you have a license to use those kind of cards. I think general advice, if I had to give to players who are beginning to draft limited or to draft, it would be, don't put that card in your deck just yet.
Yeah.
Wait for the numbers, wait for the data, and we'll figure out where the best homes for that card are. But early, it's going to be, a lot of the times you can't be playing it in your deck, or it's not going to be good against large enough fractions of other deck. Yeah. What do we think, Soul Immolation? Like 65+% win rate?
I mean, the card's just a house. Like, I played that in the pre-release, and like every time it like either won me the game or like you just like save it in case like you start to fall behind, and then it wins you the game. I double splashed it. It asks so little of you, and is a plague win so often.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear about the double splash. I know it was pre-release, so like you never know what you can do there. But in draft, it will be interesting to see how often people are trying to fit that very powerful card in with the somewhat meager splashing options we have outside of a few things we'll talk about later. So one of these being like double pipped is kind of nice.
Yeah, or maybe
the soul immolation. Kind of
or put it in goblins where your largest creature is a 2/2.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be a little bit tricky. You do definitely need to have some toughness somewhere.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so the next thing is the cumulative target count for each damage compared to other sets. And I think that this is what I told you before. 8% of X1s is unprecedentedly little. This lowest numbers was in, what was that? Bloomborough, and it was 14% so far. So, and this is a big difference. Like in things like even Spider-Man, if we look recently, or Final Fantasy, 28% of the common creatures were X1s. And then it sort of goes back to the norm, even though it's still at X2 and less, it's still only 42%, but that mainly is because of that low number of X1s. And then at X3 or less, it sort of narrows with all the other sets. So yeah, there you go. If we look at each individual number, this is what I said, that there is actually quite a lot of X2s. 35% of the creatures at common are X2s. But because there's so few X1s, the sum of those is still one of the lowest. But actually, yeah, there's quite a lot of 2 toughness creatures. And quite a lot of 3 toughness creatures. 33% that only Tarkir Dragonstorm had more in the recent years. And then there is like medium amount of large creatures at common. Which is strange because most of the time when we look at those things with more than 4 toughness, and we see some sets at 16-15% of those, it's the sets with the common land cycler. This set has only 2 common land cyclers, and it is indeed somewhere in between in the big creatures from all the other sets, which I found a bit entertaining. Okay, keywords. What do we talk about? What do we tell about those?
Yeah, I guess I can jump in here, but I mean, anybody feel free to add on. So this is a new keyword, Blight. You'll see the examples on these different cards. It's either it's going to be an additional cost to cast a spell potentially, so you can think of it as a kicker variant, I suppose. In some cases, it may be tacked onto an ability, like on the 4th card, the Gristle Glutton. But it's something, or the first card, the Spiral and Solitude. But it's something that, generally speaking, we'd probably think of as a downside or a detriment to a card. You know, you're putting a counter on that shrinks your creature, or may kill your creature, but there are some potential opportunities, whether it's in synergies like in the middle card, Boggart Mischief, where you don't mind your creature dying because you end up getting a drain effect, or maybe in like a black-white deck or some cards within those colors where you maybe want to remove a counter to get a potential benefit, where it could be seen as neutral or even potentially an upside in select situations. But generally speaking, you have to try and build around that, or else it will be a detriment to whatever creature you're putting it on. If you can do that, then you're getting an undercosted effect. You're getting a counter spell for blue if you Blight 2, for example, or you're getting to rummage, for no mana if you Blight 1. So it's just something you might have to try and build around. But if you can do that and you can reduce the minimal downside from the effect, or even use it as upside, then you're getting your cake and eating it too, in a way. So because you are shrinking your board to try and get more powerful effects, I would imagine it kind of will support a more grindy game. And at least in the early access games that I was playing, it kind of felt this way, where you weren't using it to try and pull ahead on a more tempo advantage. We're using it to try and gain some value so you could extract that over the next couple turns potentially. And unless you do want to just banish your creature, you do want to have some higher toughness so it can hold those blight counters. As a note, if you Blight 2 on a 1/1, like, that's totally fine. You can Blight beyond what their toughness is. So it's just something to keep in mind. I was optimistic about this in early access, and it might have been that it was like the decks I saw it in, or the color pairs were maybe a little stronger, but it played reasonably well for me. So I think there are chances to leverage this. So I don't know if anybody else had any other experiences or things they want to add on for Blight.
No. Okay. Yeah, I think it looks pretty okay. I think that especially the black removal that can allows you to Blight 1 instead of paying 3 mana. That sounds like a pretty good bargain, especially that it's 2 mana exile anything.
Yeah.
And
then
this is an important meme that was added.
Yeah. In our group, we were discussing for those who maybe skipped or don't have chosen not to remember the format one. There was a very fun common Axiom Engraver that helped you kind of get through your deck to find your higher impacted cards, get rid of your extra lands or your lower value spells to find what you're looking for. And there's a potential opportunity. I liked one a lot too, Mike, but I think many people have chosen to forget it. But there's a potential opportunity here for Gristle Glutton to do a very good Axiom Engraver impersonation, not just because Engraver came with 2 oil counters and Glutton comes with 3 toughness, but you can also put these blight counters on other creatures as well. You can do it at instant speed if something's already blocking for whatever reason, or you're trying to find what you need to find, your higher value cards within your deck. So I'll say this card, I already had
even if they target a removal at your creature, just Blight
that too. Yeah, you can not that you would necessarily fizzle it, though you could if they have an extra ability, but you may say, okay, this creature's dying anyway, let me get a rummage out of it as well. So I found this card to perform a little better than what I thought it was going to do, and I thought it was going to do pretty well at baseline. So just something to kind of look out for.
Yeah. Who wants to talk about Vivid?
Me. I would love to talk about Vivid.
Go for it, Sam.
Vivid is a keyword that cares about the number of colors among permanents you control.
It's just domain for colors, isn't it?
Yeah, domain for non-land permanents, or I guess any permanent, but there are 14 cards with Vivid, which is kind of a low number. Most touch G, and it's largely on uncommon. So there's only one common Vivid card, which I think is the green giant on the right there. There are 10 uncommons, including a cycle of these elementals at uncommon that are very important to my skeletons, and 3 rares or mythics. So I think this is going to be a big part of the format, even if it's not on as many cards as like Blight. So you do have to note that lands are colorless unless you put this little aura on there, which can actually turn your land into a certain color. I think that there are a bunch of ways to do Vivid, but in particular, the set has 33 hybrid cards and multicolored tokens to help you get there faster. So there's just like a blue-black 2-mana 2/2 flash at common. That gives you blue and black for Vivid, so I think that's going to be a very important part of this mechanic as well. You can try to rate the cards based on like what is the ceiling of my deck, what is the floor of my deck. Like when I cast my Shrine Striker, which is the 4 blue 3/3 flying, when it enters, draw cards equal to your Vivid count. If I play this for X is 2, is that good enough for my deck? If not, you might want to think about trying to get more like hybrid creatures into your deck so that you can top that out when you're curving. Vivid in general supports a longer, grindier, big game with lots of permanents because you actually need permanents on board to be able to leverage Vivid at all.
Yeah, so basically go for the board stall of some sort, which means large butts. And then once you create the board stall, then you should win because your 6 mana things are doing so much more because of the Vivid.
And I think that it is... I lost my train of thought. I think that... Oh, this mechanic also is in... it's not one of the 5 supported color pairs, but they have billed blue-green and green-red as kind of Vivid decks. So like the
Teamer sort of, yeah.
Teamer Vivid space is kind of where.
And
it's
then
at.
you splash the Kithkeeper and the Shimmer Creep.
I think I'll get to that later.
Oh yeah, but you have your skeletons and that. So maybe we'll leave the deeper discussion on Vivid when you get the skeletons because that's specifically there. Transforming double-faced cards. There are 7 of them. All of them are rare or mythic, so we won't be going too much time on them. They all have when it enters something, and then when it flips, also the same something. So all are quite cheap.
If you open these and they're your colors, just take them. There you go.
Yeah, that's very easy. And even if they're off your colors, you probably still want to take them.
You might be able to make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've seen someone playing Brigid in Merfolk.
Yeah,
and
they
it was
all have
fine.
good enough front sides. Yeah.
Because they get like Brigid. Let's get to Brigid. It has 3 mana 3/2 when it enters, or when it transforms back into the front side, you make a 1/1 Kithkin. And on the back side, it's still a 3/2, but now it taps for amount of green or white mana in any combination that is equal to the number of creatures you control. So, and you can pay green to flip it to the green side, and then white if you're on the green side to flip it to the white side. So you can go, I have Brigid on turn 1, turn 2, I flip her into the green side, make a lot of mana, cast some big creatures. Next turn I flip her back and create another 1/1. And it just works like that forever. And there's Oko, which is a planeswalker with the same ability and has all the minus abilities on one side, all the plus abilities on the other, which makes for an interesting play. But it's a rare mechanic. It's going to be fine. Those cards are pushed, most of them at least. So yeah. I guess that you will have to think hard whether you want to flip them or not. And the fact that it costs 1 mana to flip will make for interesting curving decisions. And then we have the second mechanic that I'm also not going to spend too much time, the Evoke. I'm not going to spend much time on it because it is only on Mythic Rares on 5 elementals. By the way, if you will notice that those 5 Evoke elementals are matching exactly the Shocklands in... where were the Shocklands last? Edge of Eternities, yeah?
Well, yeah, it's all the unsupported pairs in this set.
Exactly, which are the pairs where the Shocklands were in Edge of Eternity. So that was all. Shocklands in Edge of Eternity were so weird because that Lorwyn was already planned. And in Lorwyn, whatever is not a Kithkin, Merfolk, Elf, Goblin, or Elemental, it gets its own Evoke Elemental. Evoke works like Evoke does. You can pay a cheaper cost to cast it, but then it dies instantly, but you will get the ETB. And the ETBs are also dependent on mana that you spent on those. So let's say Catharsis is costing 4 Boros Hybrid. You can evoke it for Boros Hybrid. And then you can choose. If you play red, then creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain haste until end of turn. If you spend white, you can create 2/1/1 Kithkin tokens. And of course, if you cast it for the full value 6, you can pay red, white for it, and then you get both abilities. So you create a bunch of 1/1s, and this becomes a 4/5 haste creature, and the 1/1s become 2/2 haste creatures, and so on and so on. So they are very busted, but there's not much reason to dwell on them. Most of them will fit naturally in Vivid decks as well. So this is probably like opening like Vibrance or Wistfulness is a good open a gate for how to get into a Vivid deck.
You can also do like some fun tricks because there's that like flash changeling that can buy something back. There's run away together that can buy something back, or there's the grave shifter that can buy something back from the graveyard. So there's a lot of ways to like get multiple bites of the same apple.
Yeah, it's just like you cannot blink those and get the value, because if you blink them, you didn't spend mana for them. So that's the thing that you have to worry. You can't reanimate those and get the triggers. So that's something to keep your mind on. Okay, Changeling. Who wants to talk about Changelings? Steve the Lion in the center there. My favorite card from the set so far.
I like Changelings. I can talk about Changelings a little bit. Also, we talked about the supported colors, right? Which are, each tied to a creature type. You have Merfolk, Elves, Goblins, Elementals, and
Kithkin.
Kithkin. Thank you very much. So the other colors are they have a common that's a changeling. So we have 5 common changelings in these multicolors, and then you have some other spatterings at various commons. And these are going to help flush out the creature type synergies in your deck, and also help flush out your vivid synergies in your deck. So these are really gluey cards there's going to be a good amount of demand for them, I think, in the draft, as a way to sort of get your synergies, moving along, right? So, and we've got some like fun reprints actually from like Modern Horizon sets. So you have Goat Nap was that in the original? Was that in Modern Horizons, or was that in the original Lorwyn?
I think it was in Lorwyn. It's an old card.
Because they have nameless, whatever, nameless inversion, which is an old Lorwyn card. They have Kindred cards in this set. I guess we're going to get to that also have Changeling. So this is a creature type Kindred typal set. So these are going to matter a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the long story short is that Feisty Spikeling is going to be an Kithkin in your Kithkin deck, and it's going to be an Elemental in your Elemental deck if you need if you need some synergies for those. It's especially important for the color pairs that have a Lord, which few of them do have.
And Mischievous Sneakling is very importantly is going to be a fairy in your Dimir Flash Not Fairies deck that does very lightly care about fairy types. Or Gangly Stompling is going to be a giant in your deck that has like that giant payoff card that gives your giants double strike. That makes Gangly Stompling quite scary.
Yeah. So yeah, look for those and find synergies and try to fit them best in your deck. I think a lot of them is going to be a necessary evil to put in your deck, but a necessary evil you're fine with, because they are maybe weaker than the monocolor cards, but give more flexibility in the draft, and they're not like unplayable in terms of power level. Like 2/3 lifelink is fine, 2/1 first strike is okay as a 2-drop, and they can support your synergies that you will need to be dense when you're playing one of those 5 4 of the 5 main color pairs. Okay, then we have Kindred. Sam, do you want to go for Kindred?
I'd love to talk about Kindred. There are 13 cards with Kindred. So Kindred is a type. It is not a subtype. It is a type. And basically it means that this spell, this non-creature spell with the Kindred type, is allowed to have a creature type associated with it.
Which is a subtype.
Which is a subtype, yes.
Creature type, which is a subtype, but Kindred is type, which is not a subtype.
Granting a card a Kindred super type, or just type, allows it to have...
Oh no!
It's not a super type.
It's not a super type. That's like Snow or Basic. I looked this up the other year because I was curious. It's really confusing. This is how they had to do it. Anyway, it means that Klacken Festival, which is a Kindred enchantment, Kithkin, counts whenever you have something that says...
Kithkin spell.
Yeah, it is a Kithkin spell. It is a Kithkin permanent on the battlefield. There are 13 cards with Kindred across all colors. There's 1 common, 7 uncommons, and 5 rares or mythics. So this is more of like a callback than like a workhorse mechanic, but there are some good ones. There's a cycle of commands at rare mythic. That's the 5. though they're for all of the supported creature types. So for example, we have Tristan's Command, which is 4 black-green and is a kindred sorcery elf. It does a bunch of stuff that I won't read because the card's really long, but it's really good.
Pretty good, yeah. It's pretty busted.
Yeah. You can use these to behold, which means like you can either point to it onto the battlefield or reveal it as an extra cost for certain cards. The Eclipse Cycle, which are these hybrid uncommons for the supported types. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You get 1 basic of the type or a card of this type. So you could grab Nameless Inversion off your Eclipsed Elf. And they also work in your graveyard, so the elves care about the number of elves in your graveyard, and your Nameless Inversion is an elf in the graveyard. If you have something that says copy target elf, for example, Tristan's Command, the first mode is create a token that's a copy of target elf you control. You can target your Furdok Core because it does not say elf creature. Furdok Core is a 3-mana Kindred artifact shapeshifter with Changeling, meaning this is every creature type and it's a manolith that can turn into a creature. So you can use Tristan's Command to copy your Furdok Core, and I believe all 5 of these rare commands, one of the modes is create a token that's a copy of target elf, merfolk, Kithkin, etc. you control.
Yeah, you can also there is the elemental mana dork. You can cast elemental kindred spells with that because it says mana can be spent to cast elementals and not elemental creatures.
Yep.
If you are wanting to explore a bit more of that, just look at the wording of the Cavern of Souls and at the wording of the typal land from this set. They will be worded slightly differently, and with Cavern of Souls you cannot activate abilities and you cannot cast non-creature spells of the chosen type, but with the whatever is the name of the Eclipsed Realms, you can actually cast kindred spells of the chosen type. Big difference if you are trying to build it and construct it. But these are the finicky meanders of Magic rulebooks. We have also Convoke, so maybe Adam?
Yeah, so for Convoke, it's a returning mechanic, something we've seen in sets before. It's on mostly white and blue cards. You'll see some exceptions here in the rare slot, but if you look at common and uncommons, they're predominantly white and blue. Obviously, you're going to get a mana discount if you have creatures on board that you can use to help pay for the spell. But because there are, like in the blue-red space for elementals, they care about 4 or greater mana value, you can still count them for that. So there's some bleed across the white, blue into the red space as well. Also, because you can be tapping your creatures, sometimes the instant speed, like we see on the 2 spells, Protective Response and an Unexpected Assistance here on the screen. You may be able to trigger some abilities for your Merfolk that trigger when they get tapped, whether it's instant or sorcery speed. So there's potential benefits there. And just overall, it's something that we've seen be very beneficial in the past, where you're trying to either add to your board or hold up your mana and then use it into your turn. When you've already established your board for creatures, use it to play an instant, either for a removal spell or for a card draw spell to pull further ahead. So it's something that we've seen play very well in the past, and I would be surprised to not see it play well as long as you can get on board effectively in this set.
Notably, instant speed Convoke tends to be somewhat more powerful than sorceress speed. Because you can hold your creatures up.
Yep.
Yeah. Do stuff in combat. You can cast a combat trick, cast a removal spell after blocks are declared, or cast Unexpected Assistance on their end step, fuel up, and then go off in your turn.
Yeah.
How many dogs are there?
Oh, I've actually got one too, but he stayed away. Yeah.
They're proliferating.
Yeah. Growing one at a time.
Maybe we had the dog master's command and it copied target dog.
Yeah. As a quick note, because these are predominantly in white and blue, we'll probably look at this when we look at the decks, but blue oftentimes will have, a bounce spell, a card draw spell, and a counter spell all at instant speed, and we don't at common, and we don't have that in this set. Like we don't have a bounce spell at common, but we do have the card draw and
we have Runaway Together.
Yeah, I guess we can count that. That one's tougher to navigate, but I guess if you are tapping your thing and you're bouncing it anyway, you could still kind of do that. Yeah.
Okay.
anyway, we'll get there when we look at decks. But
yeah, because I think that it's going to be important in the context of Merfolk because they do abilities when they get tapped, and that's it. Okay, there is another keyword thing. Behold, we've seen it in Tarkir Dragonstorm, so you should be roughly aware of that. Whenever you cast this spell, you can show something that is specified on the card, and then you get an effect. And here we have things that either make the spell cheaper, like Kinsbale Aspirant, which is a 1 mana 2/1 Kithkin. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you either behold a Kithkin or you have to pay 2 mana, which means that it's either 3 mana 2/1, which would be a terrible rate, or 1 mana 2/1, which is a decent rate. Which means that you want it as often as possible to be costing 1. And that, on the other hand, puts you to, I want to have as many Kithkins in that deck as physically possible, because I want to be sure that if I draw it in my opening hand, I will also have at least 1 Kithkin in my hand, which is not trivial, which means that your deck should be probably like, 14 to 16 Kithkins in total. And there are, of course, one of them for each color. Some of them cost 1 mana, some of them cost 2 mana. All of them will cost 2 more if you don't have a creature of the given type to show. And remember, you can behold a Changeling, and it works. And then there's the series of champions, and these have a different type of behold. They do have to show one of the creature of the given type, but instead of just showing it, it also gets exiled by that creature, and you get it back once the creature leaves the battlefield. But these are super competitively costed. You're sacrificing 1 card, but you're getting a lot of creature for that. So you get like a 4 mana 6/6 with upside. You get a 4 mana 5/5 that can obliterate the board. Or you get like 4/6 for 4 mana that every time it taps, it stuns something. So these are like super powerful, but the cost is that when you play it in your deck, for example, and it's late game and you top deck it and you don't have anything, you're just going to rot in your hand, or you have to exile something that you have on board in order to make it playable, which makes complex decisions. And I think that there's the one mythic that you have to behold 2 creatures of a given type, and it changes a very expensive Worldly Tutor into a Green Sun Zenith that can get a non-green creature. So, yeah. Ramp is going to be important in this set, I think, especially for Vivid.
Well, it depends what kind of Vivid deck, as we're going to see in the builds. But if you're trying to play like all the rares in your sealed pool, or all the rares that are getting passed around the table in a draft, then stuff like Great Forest Druid, Shimmerland's Growth, Foraging Wicker Maw, Changeling Wayfinder, these are going to be the ways that you're going to have to do that. Also, I think that a lot of the multicolor soupy decks, like the more late game decks, are going to have like a creature type package in them, right? Like an Elves package, and then you have some fixing to play your, splashy rares or whatever. So like, if you're doing that kind of thing, the core, the shape-shifting core becomes more valuable.
Yeah. Any comments on the mana base? I think that this to me looks more like a 5-color mana base than a 3-color mana base. Because 5-color mana base, you won't have permanent that tap for mana of any color. And we have the 2 mana 0-4 that does it. We have the 3 mana Mana Rock. Foraging Wicker Maw can fix for all the 5 colors. Shimmer Wild's Growth, that's on the other hand like a 3-color. But Springleaf Drum also like a 5 mana color. If you want to play 3 colors, so let's say 2 colors and a splash kind of decks, then things like Changeling Wayfinder are better, because you can have 1 land of that splashed color in your deck on the basic, maybe 1 dual of some sorts, and then 1 Changeling Wayfinder, and that is enough for fixing your splashed bomb, for example. Here, splashing bombs is going to be that difficult because a lot of them are bombs in a synergistic sense. Like, you cannot splash one of the champion of the show because you need so many Merfolks in order to play it successfully. So you probably can't play it outside of a dedicated Merfolk deck. But 5-color, Vivid is being supported by that, and I think that the mana base is built to support Vivid. Obviously, lands don't contribute a color, but in order to contribute to colors, you need to cast spells of that color, and fixing is necessary for that.
Yeah, I will say is one add-on to that, Circo, but at least in the drafts that I did, I felt like sometimes it could get a little on rails, or it could get very quickly off the rails if you're just not seeing something or someone's cutting you on your typal strategy. So it is nice that these kind of exist at cards that probably won't be picked early, generally speaking. So if you are feeling like you're going off the rails a little bit or it's not coming together, you might be able to pivot into this. If you had some power and you're trying to find the lane, this may be a chance to still keep that power in your deck and have something that turns into a reasonable deck. I don't know if I would be searching for this initially in week 1 or week 2, but time will tell if this is something that turns into more of a 1B strategy rather than a 2A strategy.
This is also something that those hybrid changelings do. You can sort of pivot off them into a different combination, because if you have a sufficient number of those, they can be used to sort of move to a different color pair if you don't see anything good in yours. In terms of land, we only have like Evolving Wilds at common. That's it. That's the land fixing for you. We have 5 shock lands. They have stunning arts. Just pick them when you draft them in paper because they look lovely. And then Eclipsed Realms is the typal land, when you can choose a type as it enters, and it taps for colorless or for 1 mana of any color, but only you can spend it on abilities and spells with the type. I think that the Eclipsed Realms in some very heavy typal decks is going to be playable as a basic fixing. Probably the best deck for it looks to me like Elementals, when you actually want to cast different colored ones. But I think that generally it's not going to be something that I would recommend putting in a deck. And people will put it probably way too often than they should. Like if you have 10 Kithkins in your deck, probably it's not worth to put a land that cannot cast 13 spells that you have in your deck, or cannot contribute a color to them. Cool. Some thoughts on the gold cards?
It's a pretty interesting breakdown. So just to walk through the exact breakdown of the set, there is a full cycle of 10 common hybrid creatures. 5 of them are in the supported types, and the other 5 are the changelings. And all the changelings are single pipped, so they're extremely easy to cast. All of the, most of the creature type ones are double pipped, so those are mostly for those decks. But the changelings are very intentionally left in there to be just generic playables that when your deck needs something like that, it's available. And I think they're all okay to play. There are 15 gold uncommons or multicolor uncommons. The supported creature types, the 5 supported types, get a full gold card. So, for example, Morkant's Loyalist, which is 1 black-green for a 3/2 elf. Other elves you control get +1/+1, and when it dies, you get an elf back from your graveyard to your hand. I think that the 5 creature type payoffs each look pretty strong. But there's only 5 true gold cards. There are 10 additional uncommon hybrid cards. There are 5 eclipsed creatures, which are these either double or triple hybrid cards for the supported creature types. Each of them has this ability when it enters, if it's Eclipse Elf, which is black-green, when it enters, you look at the top 4 and you get either a forest, a swamp, or an elf into your hand. This cycle looks very, very strong, all 5 of them. I think they're just like cantrip creatures. They should be very, very strong. And then the 5 off-color pairs, which are blue-black fairies, which is actually like a flash deck. White-black and white-red each care about -1/-1 counters. And then, like we said earlier, green-blue and green-red each care about vivid. The green one, there is a cycle of hybrid cards for these colors. I think, for example, Voracious Tome Skimmer, which is the blue-black one. This is triple Dimir hybrid for a 2/3 flying fairy rogue. Whenever you cast a spell during an opponent's turn, you may pay 1 life. If you do, draw a card. This card is not going to be played outside of blue-black, I imagine, unless there's some monocolor shenanigans going on. But, for example, the hybrid uncommon for green-red is Noggle Robber, which is 1 Gruul hybrid for a 3/3. When it enters or dies, make a treasure. This is a lot more flexible, assuming your deck is skewed heavier towards red or green. So you could play this in a heavy green deck and just have like a 3/3 that makes treasures when it enters or dies, which is more broadly useful. So a bit of a mix on how the set is actually broken down. At rare, there are 19 rares and 5 mythics that are gold. The 5 supported creature types each get 2 rares plus a little extra. One is the Kindred command, and then the other 5 decks get an extra rare, and then a mythic hybrid Evoke elemental. So there's a cycle of, as we saw earlier, these Evoke elementals that care about paying mana equal to the cost. And then there's a couple 3-color cards as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of them are powerful. I think that, message that we should push across, those hybrid Eclipsed cards are just broken. I don't know about the elemental one. Maybe that one is a bit on the weaker side. It's still probably more than good enough.
That one fetches your Vivid payoff, so I'm into it.
Yeah, that's true. And the lands that you don't that you need, because you need to get to at least 6-7 lands on board. But yeah, I mean they are busted. They're absolutely broken. They are like phenomenal. Every single one of them that I played so far looked super powerful. And I'm clicking on the slide, but I'm on the wrong window. There we go. Okay, red black goblins. So here we have the first archetype, and we're going to cover the 5 main archetypes in detail, and then we're going to give you some examples of decks that are maybe off the beaten track. But black red goblins, they center around the Blight mechanic, around small bodies, and around incremental nickel and diming kind of small value cards. So we have 2 of those hybrid cards. One of them is the Eclipsed thing, which is hybrid Rakdos for a 2/3. And you look at the top 4, you can get Goblin, Swamp, or Mountain. As I said, these are extremely strong in all cases, and all of the 5 main color pairs will have the Eclipse card. Then there's Chaos Spewer, which is a 3-mana 5/4, and when it enters, you may pay 2 mana extra, and if you don't pay 2 mana extra, you need to Blight. And this is an interesting game because sometimes you'll pay 5 for a 5/4, sometimes you will pay 3 and Blight on like a 1/1 and keep a 5/4, and sometimes you will pay 3 and Blight on it and you get a 3/2, depending on the situation on the board, really. And then Signpost Uncommon is just 2 mana 3/2 with Death Touch. Whenever another goblin you control dies, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So these are the kind of cards. What you want to do is you need to make a lot of small creatures, go wide in an aristocrat style of that way, and then find ways of utilizing those things. So enablers, what we have is like Elder Auntie, which is a 3 mana 2/2 that makes a 1/1. Or Sourbread Auntie, which is 4 mana 4/3. When it enters, you may Blight 2, and then you create 2 1/1s. So you just go wide, you generate those bodies. And then what do you do with those bodies is you can find some ways of turning them into damage, like Boggart's Mischief. It's a 3 mana enchantment, Kindred, it's a goblin. And whenever a goblin creature you control dies, you drain 1. And when it enters, you can Blight 1 and you make 2 goblins. So you can imagine that having like 1 or 2 even copies of that one, every goblin that dies under your control will drain for 1 or even 2. Because you make 2 of the goblins spotted by that card most of the time, you already drain them for 2. And then you can Blight on your goblins, get some value, move the counters, make more goblins. All of those things are going to accrue in slow kind of nickel and dime. And I think that this is going to be the way that those goblin decks play. They're not going to be the fastest, but if they will survive to a certain moment, they can generate so much value through those. I'll sacrifice my 1/1, I'll put a counter here, that it's going to be very difficult to win against them. And also they have one thing that lots of aggro decks struggle with. A 3/3 blocker will not blank them, because they can generate that damage without getting into combat at all. Or by getting into combat and losing your stuff, which is not something that normally happens. So yeah, it looks pretty fun. And we have Skeleton for the goblins. I don't know whose it is, so...
I think this might be mine. If not, somebody speak up. But yeah, the strategy that I went for, similar to what Circa was talking about on the other page, is trying to find ways to use your creatures to nickel and dime your opponent, to generate advantage, to try and play a bit of a smaller game where you're using removal to take out opponents' key threats that might be generating them value through the engines they're trying to set up, or or the lords or whatever high rarity cards they have, and just trying to go wide, use Blight to find the cards I care about, with like the Gristle, Glutton, to be discarding cards to find my more powerful cards, or playing Boggart Mischief, which I put 2 in the deck, as a way to try and generate.
Wise choice.
Yeah. I think it's the only uncommon that I put 2 of out of all the skeletons I did. But it just, whenever I saw an opponent play 1, it was already going to be tough sledding, and when they played a second, usually it was, which I could conceive, it's early access, so they asked us not to. So I'll just let them drain me out over 3 turns and go to the next one. Notably, I think 2 of the, out of all the like interaction removal spells at common in this set, I think Cinder Strike and Bog Slither's Embrace are going to be at the top end for playability, because of what Circle talked before. 4 damage is going to kill 85+% of creatures across rarities, and you get an exile effect for 2 mana in the Bog Slither's Embrace, so you can handle whatever your opponents are doing while you set up your engines. You get your game plan kind of under you, and it can set up really easy double spelling because they cost 1 or 2 mana. So I think there's a lot of potential to be setting up a longer game where you're keeping their board small, you're doing a few damage here and there, you're doing some drains, you're pecking in where you can. So that's kind of what I've built here. It is very Goblin Blight focused. I don't have any non-typal cards other than like the rare, the 2 Practice Hybrid, which lets you Blight 1 to basically have a creature go in, and if it dies, you get to get card advantage. You get to play cards off the top of your deck. But beyond that, it's very Goblin Blight focused. So, yeah.
Okay.
I do have the Elm there. Sorry, I saw that. Yeah, thanks for highlighting that one. That's a place to put your Blight counters. You can remove 2 of them to give -2/-2 to a creature your opponent controls. So it's a way to, if you're not just killing your creature with a Blight counter to get some benefit, it's a place to kind of store Blight counters that you can use repeatedly as sorcery.
It's interesting. Okay, I was literally just starting to ask a question about the Elm, because I'm skeptical about whether Elm is going to be a great card or not. But
I don't think it would be great, but I think it's nice to recognize like the bristleback brute and the Elm. If you can have one of those to put counters on, if you don't have your engine set up yet, it can kind of buy you some time. It can either clear the board or like build a bigger creature, because you can remove those counters with mana you have. Because I think there aren't a ton of mana sinks. So where you can find them, I think it's kind of beneficial, because if you don't have card draw in this color pair, as you like, you have the Rummaging, you can do the 3 mana 2 off the top, or like Blight 1 to get 3 off the top, so you can see some of your deck. But if you don't have those cards, you didn't draft them, or you don't see them, you need some way to try and use your mana to stay in the game. So if you are getting to Blight and you get to use your counters or whatever, I think it can still kind of keep you in the game.
Can we look at the numbers on the Elm? Because the fact that it has 4 toughness, I believe it has 4 toughness, and you have to remove
it's a 1/2 for 3 mana that can become 6 mana for 3 -2/-2 to something.
Yeah,
and you can split it across 2 turns.
It's more of like, hey, I did this on turn 7 to play and remove 2 counters to kill something, and the next turn I Blight 2 onto it and remove 2 more counters again. I think it's just a way to try and make sure you keep the board clean and you use your mana. I don't think it's a star of the deck. It's probably a C+ type of card. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's in the B.
I do think that it needs some kind of a remove counter kind of thing, so that you can get those.
And I like the brute probably more, because you can set up like, okay, I'm kind of going wide. I've killed their stuff. They are trying to hold back with their 1 or 2 big blockers, and then I just do a falter effect and just swing with my 4 1/1s and a 3/3 or something.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the Ors of Hybrid uncommon. It costs 1 Ors of Hybrid.
I played one of those in this deck. It's tough with needing the triple black.
If you're talking about the 7 turns, if you have 9/8 blacks mana split, you'll get there.
So I will think for this deck, I think it'll probably be pretty even between black and red. But in all the other decks that I built, it did feel like there was a color that was kind of driving the deck a little bit more than the other color. So I mean, we can look at those and see what other people think. But for this one, I
think that later in the format, red is going to be more open, because to me it seems like it's the most difficult color to draft, which probably will mean that it will lag behind a bit and it will be drafted a bit less.
Yeah,
but I'm pretty sure that early in the format, black dominating goblins decks are going to be the ones.
Spells, and it'll. I mean, I think as we figure out the general pecking order of the 5 main decks, plus like the Vivid deck and maybe a couple of the less supported decks. We'll probably figure out which decks are more likely to be over versus under drafted. But yeah, Reds, if this ends up being a good deck, but Elementals maybe isn't as strong, yeah, we'll see what happens with Red. Yeah.
Cool. Kithkin. Okay, so Kithkin, this is probably a simplest conceptually archetype. Play a lot of small creatures and overrun your opponent by using combat tricks or onboard combat tricks that make them grow bigger. However, I think that generally the Kithkins might be playing into 2 different varieties of Kithkin. I think that this is going to be like purely go white Kithkins, and I think that there's also the big Kithkin deck where you dump on a bigger thing and make it your main challenger. There are a couple of things that make things grow and then give this sort of pseudo exalted to creatures, and you can just make one large attacker through that. But yeah, generally there are 2 the hybrids. The Eclipsed Kithkin does the same as other Eclipse things, but it's 2 mana, which is just amazing if you're playing a purely green white deck, and you can always cast it on turn 2 and make sure that you hit that land if you need it, or make sure that you hit that 3-drop if you need it. And then there's the Wary Farmer, which if a creature entered your battlefield under your control, you surveil 1 at the end of turn. Signpost is Thoughtweft Lieutenant, which is green-white for a 2/2. Whenever a Kithkin you control enters, you can give a creature +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. And this is, again, if you go wide, it can do a lot of +1/+1ing on the turn. But if you build big Kithkins, it can also give your massive Kithkin trample, which is important for it to connect and you know that it cannot be chomped ad nauseum by 1/1 goblins. Yeah, there's some payoffs for having them. The Aspirant, which is the Behold the Kithkin thing. Mistmeadow Council, this is cost 1 less for Kithkin, and it's a 5 mana 4/3 that draws you a card. So 4 mana 4/3 draw a card is a pretty good rate. And if you go white Kithkins, then Timid Shieldbearer is going to be quite important. That's the 2 mana 2/2 Kithkin, and for 5 mana you can pump all your team. Yeah, and then not a very sophisticated thing. I think that one thing that maybe is important to note, not amazing combat tricks in this set.
Yep.
Compared to what we had last year. There is a very good green one that gives +3/+3. But apart from that, not that many combat tricks.
Yeah.
So
Circo, yeah, for the key cards, that's why I put the 2 higher costs that aren't Kithkins, because yeah, at least in the decks that I saw and the Kithkin that I played, oftentimes opponents could kind of stonewall you a little bit, and you had to find some way to push through, because interaction wasn't super strong in these colors, and the combat tricks weren't really there. So I felt like the 5 and 6 mana, pump my team or send something to the air were ways to push through the last, 6 to 8 points of damage, or even the 2 mana one that you can maybe do it once, or if you have another one, do it twice on the same creature to force them to sort of like an equipment. You equip this ability onto the creature and then send it, so they have to block it and maybe trade. Because I saw a lot of boards where just Kithkins weren't able to push through the last little bit of damage. Yeah.
Typical problems of Selesnya decks.
Yeah.
Once you run out of steam, it's hard to get back.
Yeah.
So who built this Kithkin abomination? I assume that it was you, because it has 2 cards that you highlighted.
Yeah. I decided that the ways to fix the issues were just to put in busted rares like Kin Binding and Figure of Fable. But if you don't happen to see those, then yeah, just trying to get on board, leverage a wider board with either the 4 mana 3/4 that can kind of pump your team and give them first strike to make blocks kind of challenging for your opponent, or the Prism of Asher that can kind of hopefully pump 3, but it maybe just 2 your creatures +2/+2 or +3/+3 to set up some attacks. Or the uncommon for 2 and a white that puts 2 Kithkins into play, and for 5 mana you can make a 1/1 Kithkin at instant speed, which can you can do that in a turn to try and go wide, or you can use like a combat trick for some of your Kithkins that have this, they're thought wefting, they're giving +1/+1 and trample, or they're giving +1/+0 to a creature or something like that, just to try and make combat a little tougher for your opponent, to be like a pseudo combat trick, even if it's on board and they can probably figure out what you're going to do. It still gives you a little bit of flexibility. But yeah, I know people were a little hot and bothered about Kithkin before early access, and I'll say, at least for me, like, it felt fine, but it wasn't the boogeyman of early access in my games anyway. So some ways to try and break through could maybe help with that.
I think you should be put on a list if you're hot and bothered by Kithkin. That ain't it right.
So okay, this version, do you think that to me it looks like it tries to be more the go wide version, but it does hedge a bit into the big thing?
Yes, and part of that is because I think you can just curve out and you might draw 2 removal spells and you just win the game on turn 6 because you're just attacking with 3 or 4 bodies every turn. But an opponent who doesn't stumble, who maybe has an interaction spell for your gold card, or something you put in play that they can kind of counter with a balance or removal spell, you're going to have to find some way to get through there. And I don't think that the go wide is going to work super well because there are a lot of, as you showed, like there's a lot of cheaply costed cards at common and uncommon, and boards might get a little gummed up a bit. So you have to find some way to push through that. And I think whether like sending to the air with the Boros card, or trying to do some mass pumps, or potential ways to do that. But again, I'm not sure, without getting into the games a lot, to really figure out what is going to work against the 1 or 2 top decks in the format. It's tough to say what your strategy 1A versus 1B will need to be. Yeah.
How do you find the 05 that the pluses for each Kithkin? Because it's like, this is again another, this is a perfect hedge card for go wide.
I never played it. I saw it once, and they had one other creature out, and it did nothing for them. So I could see that being
it is my
I would imagine that's more common than not, to be honest. Yeah.
And I don't like the fact that it is. I would prefer it as a 1/4 also, because like 0/5, you can just bluff attack into it all day.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Prism Blaster was a very good card. Yeah. Yeah.
When I played this deck, the Fallow Knight was the most important card. One of the most important cards.
The which one?
The Gallant Fallow Knight. Foul. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, the +1/+0 first strike.
4 mana 3/4 creatures you control get +1/+0. Kithkin get first strike. Card was
the chicken.
Really good for me. Yeah. You can also personify it mid combat.
Yep.
I mean, I can personify it when I'm playing goblins. No problem with me there.
Yeah, personify is a wild card. They decided to print us a Restoration Angel for 2 mana. Pretty good.
Yeah. No. Oh, that card is it's going to be. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting card. Let's put it like that. Yeah. Okay, I think that Kithkin relatively simple. Let's move to the elves then. Are elves simple? Well, yes, they are, because they are all tribal decks. So there you go. In order to draft a successful elf deck, if it says elf or changeling on it and can be cast by green or black mana, probably you should pick it. Definitely pick Eclipsed Elf. That card is broken. 3/2 Eclipsed version looks at the top 4. Elves also have a Lord, which is a 3/2 that gives other elves you control +1/+1, and when it dies, it returns an elf from your graveyard to your hand. Something that is important because elves tend to want to put elves into graveyard. So there are some cards that allow you to mill cards, like Scarblade Scout, which is a 2/2 lifelinker that when it enters mills 2. Downhand Eulogist, a 4 mana 3/3 that when it enters it mills something. There is just Malevolent Rumble that doesn't make a spawn card, which fuels your graveyard. And there are some payoffs like Morkant's Eyes, which is something that surveils every turn, is an elf enchantment, so counts itself as an elf. And at some stage later in the game, you can sacrifice it for 6 mana. And then for each elf in your graveyard, which Morkant's Eyes are going to be, because you sacrifice it as a part of the cost, you make a 2/2 elf that comes into play untapped. So often can happen that you get 5 to 6 2/2 elves and try to finish the game through that. It is an aggressive deck that can be very fast and is backed up by green and black removal, which is quite proactive in this set. But it also can play this longer grind by putting things in the graveyard and waiting for one of multiple bombs that also exist in those color pairs. So who built the Elves deck and put all those bombs in?
Yeah, I think this was me also. Yeah, I guess similar to what Circo said before, yeah. Just try and find ways to get on board. Use your graveyard as another bit of resource, whether to bring stuff back at once with the gold uncommon, or kind of use it to do all the 2/2s, like Circo said, for the enchantment. There's a lot. They weren't on the page before, but there's the 4-mana 4/4 common that can only be blocked by one creature, and you can pump any elf up +2/+2 for 5 mana. That can be pretty annoying. I mean, it's pretty telegraphed, but because they might be looking to play around that, if you have any instant speed interaction, particularly like with Blight Rot, for example, you can maybe kind of blow them out. But in general, it just felt like a nice deck where you play on curve with fairly high powered stuff. You have cheap interaction, and you have ways to bring stuff back or buy it back and use it from the graveyard. So you get a lot of value, and it was a pretty strong deck from what I saw in early access. So nothing too crazy with it. I don't know if other people had experiences, but I felt like it was one of the stronger color pairs.
Yeah, I had experience. It was pretty strong. I see in the chat someone saying Moon Vigil Adherence notably missing. This is the card that is a 4-mana 0/0, but it has power and toughness equal to the number of elves in your creatures. Yeah, creatures you control plus creatures in your graveyard. And with the self-mill theme of elves, that can go pretty fast, pretty quickly.
I
and
think there's
also
potential to have that in there. Yeah, I hesitated from putting that and the enchantment in there, but you can, in general, if you can use your graveyard as a resource, if you have 1 or 2 of the mill cards, if you have that plus the enchantment potentially, they'll definitely play well together, which is what you would hope to see.
So I played with this card quite enough, and my experience was that this card, if elves were open, it's going to be great. If elves were not really open and they still managed to draft it, it's going to be horrendous. Because if you have a good elf deck, you don't need to cast them on turn 4 because you have alternative options to do things on turn 4. And if you cast it on turn 6, it's probably going to be like a 7/7. If you have a bad elf deck, then you probably have to cast it as a 2/2 on turn 4, and then it feels just like you're doing something wrong with your life. So yeah, I think that it's a good card, interesting one, because it's a dumb 4/4 beast that doesn't do anything on ETB, but big enough to survive most removal. So opponents either need to use premium removal on that, which is a small win, or can't deal with it, which is a big win, because it's going to be keyword big. Fun card. And I think that your evaluation of the deck is also correct. It's powerful, grindy, aggressive, all those things together. I think it's going to be my favorite thing to do in the early days, because I do like particularly this type. Am I a Junt player? Did I just discover that I'm a Junt player?
Maybe so. Yeah.
Damn it.
You have to be careful though, because a lot of these cards will mill you out if you're not thinking about. You need to think about what turn you're going to turn the corner and try to kill them.
Definitely, and none of these mills are May. I think they're all required. Yeah. So.
And I lost one game to milling myself on the pre-release, and I don't care.
It's a price you have to pay sometimes. Yeah. Should have played 41 cards, Circo. Yeah.
Never. Stop with that 2-duck cube propaganda. It's 45 or 40.
There you
don't
go.
play 41. 41 is just not elegant.
Yeah.
All right, Merfolk. Merfolk is a different version of Kindred. Typal decks. Yes, you still have small creatures. You still have the Eclipsed thing. This time it's a 2/3, showing that it may be a bit less aggressively stunted because the elf was a 3/2. It does have a lord, quite a good lord, 2-mana lord, that gives +1/+1 to Merfolks and also untaps one of the Merfolks every turn. And a bunch of abilities that allow you to tap, including Convoke, and then some other abilities that allow you to tap your own things. And a lot of things that when you tap a creature, something happens. So there is like one Merfolk that when you tap it, it loots. There is some other, when it attacks, it returns something to the graveyard. So general theme of the Merfolks is I have small creatures, a good amount of card advantage and tempo plays, and Convoke to utilize going wide with maybe smaller creatures. I think that. Oh, and also one of the best removal suites in the format, because there is the Luminal Hold, which is sort of like Oblivion Ring effect that gains you some life. Blossom Bind, which I think is it possible that it's the best blue removal spell in Limited ever?
No, Unable to Scream is better.
I think Unable to Scream is better. I found this card so bloody frustrating because unlike all the other versions, this is the top target creature doesn't untap until end of turn. No, it doesn't untap during your untap stage. But
No,
this one,
it can't.
but this one says it can't untap. I have all those tricks that let me untap my Merfolks or whatever, and I can't. You also cannot put counters on it, which means that you cannot wither on this poor creature. So it just sits there in isolation. It's basically 2 mana Oblivion Ring for creatures, isn't it? Abilities still do work, so that's a bit of a problem. But yeah, I mean, good removal package, small creatures, not ton of evasion, which is a problem with those small creatures. And then some value cards that allow you to play a grindier game. So who built the Merfolk deck? And don't tell me it's Adam for the 4th time.
I think it is Adam.
Mine are coming.
Yeah, I think it was me again. Yeah, it's basically what you said. Try and get on board with a lot of bodies and try and use those bodies to play Convoke costs on cards like Temporal Cleansing, your bounce spell, your card draw spell. And then, yeah, just try and get through, maybe with flyers like the 5 mana that has Convoke that makes a 2/2 flyer plus a little 1/1 on the ground, the Sky Swimmer.
You really like your hurler, don't you?
Yeah, it was very good. and this is another deck where I felt like you needed to be able to turn the corner somehow. And that's a way to do it because there didn't seem like there was a ton of flying and not very much reach in the set either. So
I do have some thoughts about the Wonder something Trapper. That card is also amazingly good. If
I like that one a lot. You can do it in a turn, and you can get some benefit, whether it's like removing a -1/+1 counter from your 2-drop, or exerting some character to make a 1/1 creature, or
with the Lord you can use it twice per turn cycle as well. And Lord is a perfect creature to tap to it because you're not putting it into combat ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that one card maybe that I think I saw a big potential in is the 3 mana 3/2 that when it attacks you can tap a Merfolk and get a creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Looping a couple of those gives you repeatable tap triggers for your Merfolks if you need those.
Yeah. I was a bit hesitant for that one because it didn't have a great way to protect itself, but I mean, it's basically a force block. So if you have any type of instant speed interaction, whether it's even something simple like a runaway together, or if you have like the white +2/+2 or something. But yeah, I mean, it's a force block for them. They can't let you keep getting these.
In a broken situation, you can get the free for that tapped creatures you control gain indestructible.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. I should have built it that way. Silly me.
That thing is hard to beat if you don't have like hardcore removal. Okay, well, relatively simple because we're talking typal synergies. Mm-hmm. So now are we coming to the SAMP area? Blue-red elementals. And when we talk, so first let's do the introduction. Like when we talked about the typal decks so far, they were all sort of aggro slanted, maybe a bit more mid-rangey, maybe a bit more grindy. I don't think this is going to be a particularly fast format either. Elementals are built differently. Elementals are more about late game, maybe more control-y. And don't get me wrong, I think that there is like a white-blue deck that is a control deck as well. But we focused on the Merfolk build of blue-white in the previous slides. Elementals, I think there can be an aggressive deck, but I think it mostly wants to be slower and grindy. And you see it from like signposts. It's not a Lord that gives +1/+1 to all elementals. It's a 3/3 flyer for 4 mana that doubles triggered abilities of Twin Flame Trawlers. And to me that screams, oh, I love to dirtle and make loop-the-loops. Is that something that your deck is built around?
Not really. I think after I was very skeptical of elementals going into, like, before I had played with the cards. After playing with the cards, seeing them in action, I'm a lot higher on elementals because I think a lot of its cards are just good, and I think you just want to build a mid-range deck. Like, I don't think you want to think of it as a control deck or like really focus on the mana value 4 or greater stuff. I think there are just a lot of cards in elementals that. There are a couple key uncommons that give you mana in Soulbright Seeker, which is a 1 mana 2/2 Beholden Elemental, or it costs 2 more. You can pay red to give a creature trample until end of turn, and if you pay 3 red, if you do this 3 times, it adds 4 mana. So once you have 3 mountains, It turns into a mana dork that doesn't have to tap. It's also a 1 mana 2/1. This combined with Flame Braider, which is a 2 mana dork at uncommon that taps for 2 mana that you can spend to cast elementals, really lets your elemental deck generate a lot of mana. And I think that there's a lot of card advantage in the elementals deck that you don't need to set yourself up to be like a control deck to really take advantage of this mana. For example, I have 2 copies in this skeleton of Kolrath Zealot, which is a 6 mana 6/5 basic land cycler, so you can get any basic land out of your deck. And when it enters, exile the top card of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play that card. This card's been really nice for me as a way to keep spending my mana that I make a ton of.
Yeah, it's a very good rate, isn't it? Like normally those land cyclers are horrendous on rate, but this one is like 6/5 draw a card for 6. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and you can turn 3 this if you have the Nuts Curve with Soulblight Seeker into Flame Braider, which is insane. If you have Mountain, which is a little tough, but
it is an ask, but one can dream.
But like you're gonna regularly get this, assuming you're in the right lane. You're gonna regularly get this on turn 5, for example, or you'll get it on 6 and be able to cast the card you get off it immediately. Burning Curiosity is another card that I highlighted here. This is 3 mana. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may Blight 1, and then you exile the top 2 cards of your library, and you may play them until the end of your next turn. And if you blighted, you get 3. I think this is another way in a heavy base red deck, so you're taking advantage of Soulblight Seeker and Flame Braider. You want to be like mostly red. This is a way to get card advantage in red. That doesn't have like 2 blue pips, which you could still play the common draw Convoke spell. That would be totally fine. But I just wanted to highlight this as a base red deck does have ways to grind and generate a lot of card advantage. And I think
I see that you're sort of slightly prepping us for mono red time, but we'll leave the full mono red to the 4.
Yeah, that wasn't me, but I do think that like being very, you'll see. The next one's gonna be Temur Vivid, and it's also very heavy base red.
Cool, man. That's a very different look at the elementals, and I think that there's still going to be the slower controlling versions and maybe like vivid adjacent version of the elemental decks. But I do like your optimism that there's going to be a mid-range version of it. Then we have blue-black flash fairies,
and this is one that I put together.
Go on, Zach.
Well,
time to shine.
It's a pretty straightforward deck, you know. The deck asks you, some of the uncommons care about, and I guess the rares too, care about controlling a fairy. There's illusion spinners that like has flash if you control a fairy. This is a very minor theme. This deck really cares about just holding mana and playing on your opponent's turn. You have Mischievous Sneakling as your like common, really your common fairy of choice, because you can hold up interaction or have played the Sneakling. And then you have probably want to have cheap creatures to get on board before your opponent and hold up interaction of Wild Unraveling or Blight Rot. And eventually you start putting down these payoffs that when you cast something on your opponent's turn, they give you stuff, right? So we saw before the triple hybrid uncommon, which whenever you cast something on your opponent's turn, you draw a card, lose a life, draw a card. And then there's the Nightmare Sower, which I've highlighted here, which is flying lifelink, a way to sort of get you the mana, the life that you lost maybe. This will let you, when you cast something on your opponent's turn, it puts a -1/-1 counter on something, so you can start to chip away their board. I think this is also a flying strategy. Largely, you're trying to get them with flyers and hit them in the air, and so you might be racing with. You might have a pretty weak ground board, but racing in the air with your flying fairies. You also have tricksy guys. There's fairies that flash the ETB. They can tap something or tap something. You have a flash fairy that turns something into a 4/4 changeling. That way you can surprise your opponent in combat, and you can just generally make your opponent's life very difficult while getting incremental advantage and then ultimately winning in the air.
Yeah, no, and I think that you Overmaster in the chat that writes that Tome Skimmer, the Dimir hybrid, looks busted, and I think like imagine having this card in something like Final Fantasy. It would have been it isn't broken because it doesn't care about fairies at all. It just cares about casting spells and then getting value through that. It would have been lovely because it would work with so many things. In this format, I think it's like maybe a missed opportunity. But on the other hand, instant spell package is there because I think that the most important part of the instant spell package is having a counter spell. And Wild Unraveling is basically cancel with slight upside, allowing you to even tap out a bit more if you're willing to put counters on something. And if that condition is fulfilled, then you want other things like card draw package at instant speed, and you have the unexpected assistance, which looks like a great way of casting things on instant speed. And I think most importantly, you have a really sizable package of instant speed creatures. So there is the Changeling, the Glamourmite. There are also some things in white, which I think might be adjacent to that plan. So maybe there is even like a blue-white version of the deck with maybe some predominantly blue with some white. So yeah, I think something is in there. And I don't think that even it has to be thought of as fairy deck, does it?
It's a very, very light theming. Like there are some rares and like the spinners. I'm not exactly sure which ones care about controlling a fairy. And then I guess there's also the 3-color Marwyn that cares about fairies you control.
Yeah, I believe it's exactly spinners and Marlin. There might be some more stuff that cares about any creature type, like the rare artifact. But those are the only 2 cards that specifically care about fairies.
Marwyn cares about fairies or elves.
Yeah.
And I think that you can safely assume that 99% of the time it's going to be in a very elf-heavy deck. But if you get Bitter Blossom with that, that's also pretty good.
I had that in my pre-release pool. It was pretty disgusting.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Okay. Upkeep exiled the top 2 of their cards. I play something for free.
Nice one. Timur Vivid. Who's that?
That's me.
I know. I'm just asking for the sake of content.
The key cards is a very simple slide. I think the enablers are the hybrid cards, and the payoffs are the cards that say Vivid. And notably, I think that Vivid, as we alluded to earlier, is sort of based in the blue-green and green-red space. And I think that crosses the Teamer wedge crosses over into elementals. And I think that the Vivid payoffs being a cycle of elementals and uncommon also makes you maybe care about the cards that say elemental on them, specifically Flame Braider, which I talked about earlier in the elemental slide, which is the mana dork that can tap for 2 for any elemental. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see my Teamer Vivid deck. So this is very heavy base red. You'll notice that I put Assert Perfection, which is the green punch spell. It is the only card that cannot be cast with red mana below 3. That's unrealistic in practice, I think. But just for the sake of showing what the deck kind of looks like, I'm trying to say that you can be very, very heavy red and splash these elemental payoffs. You can see the bottom end is all of these just elementals. You have the Flame Braider, which is the mana dork, and the Soulbright Seeker, which is the 1 mana dork. Where if you have 3 red, you can turn it into 4 red. You have Noggle Robber at uncommon in the 3-drop slot. That's the hybrid Gruul card that creates a treasure. And you use these cards to enable Vivid. So you're going to lean heavily on hybrid mana. So you can see I have Feisty Spikeling, which is the Boros hybrid in the 2-drop slot. I have Gangly Stompling, which is the Gruul hybrid in the 3-drop slot. So you get white, green, and blue pretty easily. If you're a base green-blue or blue-red deck, you also get Mischievous Sneakling, which is the Dimir hybrid. So you can get your Vivid colors, the color count up, without reaching into a 3rd color, which is really important. And you also don't need to play that green enchantment that could turn a land in any color. You can also splash white for Liminal Hold, for instance. That's the red Oblivion Ring, or the white Oblivion Ring to get the count up. But I think the most important part of this deck is the actual Vivid payoffs. So I have all of them here. you can see in the 6-drop slot there is Prisma Basher, which is 4 green, 6/6 trample. When it enters, you basically pump X things by X, where X is your Vivid, which is like a huge overrun effect for your team. I think possibly
No trample though.
No trample, yes. The card itself does have trample, but it doesn't grant trample. I think maybe more important is Shimmer Creep, which is 4 and a black, single black for a 3/5 menace, and it has when it enters, you drain equal to your Vivid. And then Kithkeeper, which is 6 and a white, for a 3/3. When it enters, you create X green and white 1/1 creature tokens, where X is your Vivid. These being not teamer colored is really important, because if you're just playing a straight teamer deck and you're splashing these as your top end, this will give you your 4th source for Vivid. And I think that the line between 3 is like where you're happy with your Vivid, and 4 is where it starts to become really busted. So I think that the black and the white one are actually just as important as the Shrine Shrieker, which is the blue one, or the green one, or the 2/1, which is the 2-drop that can deal damage to any target. I also want to point out the blue-red uncommon is kind of busted with the Vivid payoffs. So the blue-red uncommon is the 2 blue-red 3/3 flyer elemental, and it basically doubles all of the triggered abilities of your elementals. So I had this in pre-release. I played a deck very similar to this, and I made 8 tokens off my Kithkeeper. I was draining for 6 off my Shimmer Creep. It really makes these top-end cards pop off. It's not necessary for this deck. It's just something you can do. But this is probably the thing I'm most excited to do going into this format.
Yeah, wait till it casts Vibrance with it.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but as a question, what is your take on things that are designed to technically enable Vivid? And there's none of those in your deck. So the 1/3 Scarecrow that can turn into any color and can fix mana, the green enchantment aura that you put on the land and the land becomes of a color. None of those cards are in yours. So you're not focusing on enabling Vivid. You're sort of focusing on building a deck and having Vivid sort of by the way, without too much effort into building it.
I know the 1/3 Scarecrow has a bunch of fans, so this is going to be a hot take. I think that card's awful. I think even if you're blighting, I think a 1/3 stat line is just really like it. That looks like a defensive stat line, but it does not deter attacks. And this set has a billion 2-mana 2/2s that do something really important that you need to be able to stop them from attacking with. If you're facing a Merfolk deck and they play the Lord, that 2-mana 1/3 is doing nothing on this board. It can team up in a double block, of course, but you would much rather have a 2/2 or a 3/1. And I think my choices of 2s and 1s reflect that. I just think that there is so much hybrid mana in this set that it is pretty easy to get your 3rd Vivid color. And the actual Vivid payoffs that you care about really putting over the top are themselves black or white. Obviously, you will play the Scarecrow a little bit, and I think the green enchantment is actually pretty good if you're in green. But I will play the Scarecrow if my mana needs it. But I think that this looks like a stronger shell to support the Vivid payoffs to me than trying to play that Scarecrow, because I just think that a 1/3 stat line in this set, it just looks very, very poor to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We gotta move on, I think. What is the green-based Vivid Soup? And is it green-based Vivid Soup or green-based Vivid Soup?
Well, if you ask Sam, it's not based because you're not playing enough red cards. I think this is probably like the level 0 approach to Vivid, where you are playing the Wicker Maws and you are trying to turn on Prismatic Undercurrents in order to like get a bunch of lands out of your deck, trying to get these worldwide pummelers out ahead of schedule and present a scary board and maybe grind with stuff like Grave Shifter or Personify or like these kinds of like rebuy your Vivid effects. you still are playing a certain amount of changelings and hybrid cards in order to enable your vivid, but this is a much more like higher end mana curve strategy. And to a good point, like you are, if your opponent has a more aggressive start, your blocks in the first few turns are not looking that exciting, especially if you're on the play, you're playing a gangly stomper on 3 and they're coming at you with a 2/2 and you can't block because you want gangly stomper to enable your prismatic undercurrents on 4. You get put in an awkward situation. So we'll see what the right way to build this kind of pool is going to look like, or this kind of strategy. But this is just like the idea of play the busted cards you get in the draft with all the green fixing.
I mean, I know already what is the best strategy to play Vivid. You just get Boggle from the special guest, play it on turn 1, you already have 2 colors covered, and then you start Voltroning on the Boggle, and later in the game you just cast your Vivid plays.
They can't kill it. It's two Vivid pips.
Yep.
Unbeatable.
I know. I broke the format yet again. But yeah, you're right. This looks like the level 0. This is how I would probably try approaching that archetype if I started. This is why we have people like Sam or Jason coming on to get those more crazy brews. Because we need crazy brewers in order to evolve as players. And honestly, even if 10% of the time they're wrong and only 90% of the time they're right, it's worth to have that risk of them being 10% of the time wrong to expand our horizons.
This is, I think, one of Adam's decks, the Orzhov Reanimate.
But I can take it over because Adam
Great.
Unfortunately had to leave in a rush. There is, I think, an Orzhov Reanimate, maybe even Abzan Reanimate deck, because there are some sufficient synergies for that. A lot of the white-black cards are actively wanting you to reanimate things that especially cost 3 or less. And we have the Orzhov Hybrid, that's a 3/6 lifelinker, comes with 2 -1 and -1 counters. You can pay 2, remove a -1/-1, 2 -1 counters to reanimate something with mana value 3 or less. Same thing goes for, there is a rare 5 mana 4/7 that comes with 2 -1/-1 counters. And you can, at the end of your turn, remove a counter to reanimate something. There is an elf that doubles reanimation effects. So if you reanimate something, you get 2 copies of that. And I think that sometimes when you will be in this situation where you can't find a lane, you started maybe in Kithkin, you got some uncommons, tree folk, and black was open, you're going to end up with this deck and maybe it will be beneficial. Also, one card worth noting is this Meander's Guide. The limitation of that card is that you really need to tap a Merfolk to get the reanimation effect from that. So not only you need to have white, black, tree folk, reanimation, whatnot, but you also need to have some Merfolks, potentially in the form of changelings of some sort. But yeah, I think that this is an interesting thing to know that at least it's possible. And I think that there will be also an Abzan version of that, because Abzan provides you with the self-mill, which will fuel your graveyard, which will allow the reanimation effect.
Here you really only have the 2-drop elf that mills 2, is it?
Yeah, but you can just trade creatures off, and that's sometimes just enough.
And also, just to note that the WotC signpost for Orzhov is supposed to be -1/-1 counter grind stuff. So this is sort of an alternate build.
Yeah. There's also the 2/5 that comes with 1 counter and allows you to draw a card when you remove it and stuff. So technically you could also mix it up with Blight and put those counters and get some value if you get more of the counter synergy. Oh yeah, here we have the combo of Slumbering Walker and Twilight Diviner. Something that can reanimate every turn and something that doubles every reanimate trigger by creating a copy of whatever you reanimated. I think that this can be a real thing if sometimes happens. Red burn combo. I assume that's Sam because it has red in it.
That's not me.
Oh no? Okay. Who did the red burn combo?
This was another Adam creation, but I can talk about it briefly because I think he gauged on a very interesting build around, which is lasting Tarfire. So Elastic Terrifier is this 2-mana enchantment at the beginning of each end step. If you put a counter on a creature this turn, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. So this turns your Gristle Gluttons into pingers, essentially. And all of your -1/-1, all of your Blight, all these things become ways to finish your opponent off. And that really makes this into a true burn effect, burn deck. And then you also have Tweeze, which is this kind of clunky 3-mana spell, but it does go face. It does 3 damage. It lets you loot. And then I'm not exactly sure what the combo is with Champion of the Path and Twin Flame Travelers. Twin Flame Travelers, I know doubles triggers, but Champion of Path. Is this the Is it the dragon?
It's the Kindle the Inner Flame, which is the Kindred sorcery that it's a 4-mana sorcery that creates a copy of target creature until end of turn. So I believe the combo is Twin Flame Travelers plus Champion of the Path. Champion of the Path basically is the champion for elementals.
Yeah.
It's whenever another elemental enters. It deals damage to target opponent, and you copy Champion of the Path, and then it deals 14 to your opponent.
That's pretty good.
There's also a mirror form here, which can turn everything into champion, I assume. I did play a little bit with Enraged Flamecaster in the pre-release, which is the 3-mana 3/2 elemental. Whenever you cast a creature or a spell with mana value 4 or greater, deal 2 to your opponent. I had that with Twin Flame Travelers, which can also deal a lot of face damage. So I think there's a lot of ways to go face. There's also Hovel Hurler, which can go face. Like it basically puts creatures in the air.
Oh yeah, that's how we know it's Adams, because this Hovel Hurler.
Yeah, he had it in every one of his builds. There's also I don't think is it here? There's a 3-mana goblin that you put you blight to deal damage to an opponent.
Yeah, right? That's Sting Slinger.
Oh yeah, he's got 2 of these in there.
Yeah. There is a lot of burn for red.
That's interesting to try to think about it. And if you don't have, this is not to you, my guest. This is to you, my listeners. If you struggle with coming up with those ideas, my best inspiration for that is running some of those stupid draft simulations. I mean, I know that they're not realistic for what's going to happen in the real drafts, but I just mindlessly like to go through decks. I don't spend more than 2 minutes on each draft. I do it on 17 lands, or I do it on Draft Sim. It doesn't really matter. But I just go through them and I just look at, okay, what would work with that card? Just mindlessly clicking. I don't even build the decks in the end. But if I do it 50 times, I learn all the cards by heart, and also I'm fertilized by some novel ideas. And if you're struggling with those kind of theory crafting strategies, this is one of them. It's like drawing a mind map to come with brainstorming, or all the other strategies that help you expand your range. Anyway, red burn combo, you saw it here first, and hopefully, and potentially also for the last time. But if you get beaten on the ladder by that deck, please do let us know.
Honestly, I do think this is going to be this is the thing. I was trying, this is my deck, Boros midrange, and part of what I was struggling with trying to beat Boros, trying to play Boros, trying to build Boros, is that the Boros aggressive creatures, or the classic Boros aggro plan that you see in so many formats, seems pretty bad in this set, right? I was worried that
red 2s are not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, there's 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 a red elemental that you can pump to give it menace, and that can get in, but there's really not a lot of good 2s. And so when we've seen this before, I remember OTJ, Boros was pretty bad at being aggressive. You start to think about big Boros, a more mid-range strategy to try to grind out the game. And I think maybe that's what we're trying to do here with all of these -1/-1 counter synergies. And then you have this giant package where you've got Baldy Aggressor that gives your giants, and notably also your changelings, double strike, and it makes Gangly Stompling quite good. I think actually you could put 2 Gangling Stomplings in this deck. It's very good with the aggressor. But the Brambleback Brutes is a very powerful card that enables a lot of profitable, or pushes a lot of damage.
Brambleback. I want my Brambleback.
But like the problem is going to be when you get to the mid game, right? And your opponent starts having defenses. So you need to do things like, I mean, I'm just thinking about like recurring things with the tree, the willow. You can start to like get additional value there. But now after looking at Adam's build, I'm thinking maybe the way you push the last 5 to 7, 8 points is by doing tar fire stuff. And that's how you're supposed to get over the finish line.
Yeah.
Boros also has probably the best interaction in the format. I think red and white probably do too. And I had an early access deck that didn't go super well, but it was like Boros with a couple of really good rares and a lot of removal. So I think Boros controls out there as well.
You know, every set we have that idea that maybe there is a Boros control, and we always get disappointed in the end. So maybe this time.
Aether Drift, I drafted Boros control a lot.
You mean twice?
No, it was more than that. The key was splashing on the network, so.
Okay. Splashing.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing screams Boros like a Demir card.
How many pylons do you have? Or victory column? What was that thing called?
I drafted a lot of starting column in that format.
Starting column. I like that card.
Okay, and that's it. That's what we have for you. We have covered the main 5 archetypes. We have given you some of the slightly off-piste approaches, some more typical. So vivid decks you're gonna see quite a lot, I'm pretty sure. It's like the 6th archetype probably. But 2 different philosophies of how to build them. And some completely off-kilter builds with fairies, Boros, and Orzhov Reanimator, and some completely mad like the red burn combo. None of them should be discarded initially, and I think that there is potential for some of them as build arounds. I do like the idea of the red burn combo. So now we just need to conceptualize those and start playing tomorrow.
Yes, please.
There you go.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. Sam, anything to plug coming up soon? I mean, we all know that you're Sam Pratt. We all know that you're on Blue Sky and Twitter, but you don't use Twitter. We all know and love Rough Drafts.
Thank you. I will be streaming tomorrow, I think. And probably Thursday as well, if you want to watch me actually play at samp_mtg. But yeah, check out my podcast, I guess.
I would highly recommend it because we've seen a lot of streamers who are very good in terms of like, not saying that you are not, but they're very good in technical play, and it's of course important to watch people for the technical play content. But Sam tomorrow, I'm pretty sure, is going to be using his skills of theory crafting, brewing, building, and figuring out a format. We need to, as limited players, have all sides of it. Good technical play, but also ability to figure out and solve the formats. I think that you are more diverse in that than most of the players that I've seen. Because I know some players, they will find one deck and then force it ad nauseum, when you are going to be exploring different avenues and try to mix cards in maybe controversial or maybe counterintuitive way. Probably worth watching that. Zachy, what are you going to be doing tomorrow? Are you...
I'll be playing the set. I don't know if I'll be streaming it, but if I can use this time, sometimes I do a little PSA at the end. If I can use this time to do any sort of PSA, I got to shout out that I live in the city of Minneapolis, and it's been quite a time. So I'd really suggest you check out Mutual Aid in Minneapolis. Support the people here. Help us in the ongoing struggle with ice in our streets. So help us get some salt to get ice out. Thank you.
And I'm not even going to make a joke about it because I find this whole situation repulsive. It reminds me of the worst that has happened in my country. These people are absolutely disgusting, and if you somehow support them, just don't listen to me. I don't care about you.
Yeah.
Just disappear. Thank you very much.
You can find another stream. You can find another podcast.
Oh yeah, totally. Find another stream that suits you. But I'm definitely not. I was always against Nazis since I was born. My nickname comes from me being annoying and Nazi, and it didn't change. I'm not going to turn more conservative on my old age because I'm not getting dumber. Anyway,
thanks,
with that optimistic end note, and of course, big hugs to all the Minneapolitans, as you have been always on the receiving end of the brute force bastards somehow in the recent couple of years. And I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know. Why do I have to say loudly that there is a chance that US is going to invade a NATO country to get an island that has nothing but ice?
It doesn't make sense, Circovitz. It's
and people who seemingly have a brain, but in fact are dumb as fuck, think that this is a good idea. I just can't. It's beyond me. Okay, but that's enough. I'm getting frustrated about it. And
after the stream, you'll get on the line. You'll call my mom. You'll talk in Polish about it. It'll be cathartic for the both of you.
Amen. Amen indeed, Uncle Pecos. Anyway, please be kind to yourselves and support people who are good and kind, because that's the only thing we can do right now. Because sure as hell, we are not going to repel idiocy. It has to repel itself. And that's how historically it's been always the case. So keep it warm. Enjoy children's card game about elves and pesky sprites that are not supported sufficiently. And have fun tomorrow when we are getting into Lorwyn Eclipsed. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.